looking up at the cosmos and its spheres. At the time, it was believed that at birth, souls detached from their original home in the Imperium, the highest of heavens, and plummeted into the sensible world. On their descent through the cosmos, an elegant framework of concentric spheres with the Earth at the center, the souls picked up the essence of each planet, which would mark their temperament and inclinations during their earthly stay. Both the stars and the planets, as well as the human spirit, are composed of a subtle quintessence, a fifth element called pneuma. This affinity between the spirit and the stars is the bond that ties the human to the divine and allows for the operations of magic. The pneuma, subtle enough to not be a body, but non-body enough to be almost soul, is in charge of carrying the sensations that the sense organs collect from the outside world to the proton organum, an organ located in the heart, where they are turned into phantasms, mental images that can be understood by the soul. It is around this pneumatic apparatus, composed of the proton organum, the pneuma, and the phantasms, that a theory of perception is cemented that would last well into the Middle Ages. The close relationship of these phantasms of the imagination with the pneuma, their natural environment, led to the latter being characterized as a mirror, in which the images captured by the senses were reflected.
So I'm watching Eros Unchained, a sneak preview. I highly recommend you check it out. It's really well put together, and it's a sneak preview to a 6-part documentary. And I'm bringing this in because this ties in to my personal studies and also what's happening in the collective. And the title of this video is Going from the Hunted to the Hunter. And in order to go from the hunted to the hunter, we have to master this like Midgard space, right? Where the heart is, where the soul is spiraling down and collecting all these influences from the planet in terms of consciousness and inclination, as the video describes. And then it collects in the heart. And in the heart, it basically allows this kind of fifth sense, right, to be present with us, which is like the soul. It's like the intuition, the knowing, the divine intelligence that's within us. And it's also our compass. And the more we get to know this space, this pneuma, this energy, this quintessence, that is the quality of our soul, the more we can understand how it's working with the outside world, like with the material world. And as described, our sensory organs pick up all this information, and that gets collected and it gets brought back into the body. There's lots of different places processing the information, but one of the places, the most important perhaps, that's processing that information is this space in the heart. And the space in the heart, this pneuma, this energy, this soul, right, that we have within us, is processing information that is brought to it, and it's projecting it into mental images. It can come in sounds, and but it's in these like deeper layers, and then these get projected, like these mental images are basically informing the soul on what's happening in its experience through its awareness here. And then it's also sending information back down to guide and to sort of adjust different things according to the information that it's picking up on. So there's been a lot of theme, like this, there's been like a big theme of healing, like regarding this the feminine energy, regarding the divine feminine, regarding like trauma, multi-generational trauma, right? Trauma that's passed down from the mother, trauma that we collect in the womb, even, you know, before we're born. And how, you know, how does all that trauma interface, right, with ourselves? Like, does it exist in the heart? Does it exist like in our sensory organs already? And that creates like a layer, a lens of perception through which like filters the information coming in from the outside world in a certain way. It certainly does. And so we're having to look at how the trauma skews our perception of the information that we're receiving from the outside world, from other people, from the environment, right? From things happening within society. And we're really having to weed through what kind of phantasms are being projected due to trauma and which ones are being projected due to an accurate reading of the environment. Because the soul really needs that information in order to make decisions to help guide. And so I thought this was a really interesting concept to continue looking into and to understanding. And it kind of dives even deeper into, like if you watch the Eros Unchained, it goes into how we become possessed by the lover, right? Because the pneuma, right, the heart is the place that connects like on that intimate soul level with people and environments. And so it describes how this was also like the pneuma is also animal magnetism. And it's also the part of us that can easily be hypnotized from the information in our environments. So if anybody has had any form of soul possession through a lover, right, through unrequited love, then they can have a mirror into the possibilities of being possessed by other forms of pneuma in the environment, not a single individual, but things happening in society. And what's really cool about this documentary is the two people that created it tie it into propaganda and the idea that whoever controls the pneuma controls the crowd, right? Whoever has the animal magnetism controls the crowd. And so I can kind of see, you know, within society, all these different groups doing things in order to generate pneuma, in order to generate this animal magnetism, which, you know, can also be described as chi, prana, life force. And the extremes that some groups go to in order to generate this energy, because it does allow them to control the crowd, right? Through simply life force, through animal magnetism, through this concept of this, like this, you know, this fifth element, but also through like the propaganda, right? It's done through tapping into that part of your brain that is easily hypnotized, right? And so so this concept of lovers and unrequited love and how hypnotized we can become in society really share a lot of lessons And I think this is, because it's such a powerful energy. And where healing ties in is, the trauma that our ancestors experienced has a certain animal magnetism to it. It has like an accumulation of energy, right? So you have spiritual powers that are induced by trauma, and you have spiritual powers that are induced by having clear perceptions of the world. And so as we move through August into September of this year, 2022, we're moving, we've done a lot of healing, right, since 2012 collectively. And we're now being able to distinguish more between those spiritual powers, right? If we're in the trauma and we're playing with pneuma and magnetism and drawing things in and pushing things out, and basically, manipulating energy in our own ways, by taking action in the world and making decisions through our trauma, that is one foot still in the underworld, right? That's a whole other set of talents, you could say, or gifts that are being cultivated and strengthened, versus doing the healing work and then coming into clear perception with your own pneuma and with the pneuma around, and clear perception about how that life force, that pneuma, that animal magnetism is being used in society from various groups, and the type of powers that you can cultivate and strengthen through having clear perception. And so collectively, perhaps we're coming out of the womb. And I think individually, everybody's going to be doing this differently. And also understanding that there is a whole world of reality in the trauma, right? Or in the underworld. I don't want to call it the womb, but it is that space, like the darker space, right? The void. And so in that space, what people, that are in heightened state of arousal are feeling and are experiencing, a lot of it is not just projection. A lot of it is real perception of happenings taking place in lower dimensions, in the underworld. And that can't be discredited, because you have the divide between the left and the right, between classical psychology and then the more esoteric stuff. And the classical psychologists tend to disregard all of that as just mental projections, right, of trauma. A portion of it is, and a portion of it is that projection. But once you get beyond that, you can move towards these different layers and levels of reality. That is a collective reality. And you can interact in that space and become master of that space, right? And there's a shared reality. It's collective. And it has, it's not just subjective, it's not just individual. So you have the subjective, which leads to the collective in that space. And so is that space trauma-based? I'm not too sure if I can call it trauma-based, but there is a portion of it, especially if we're dealing with the underworld, which is trauma-based. But then if you go further past the trauma deeper into that, into the layers of the underworld, then you are dealing with other dimensions that might not be trauma-based, but that are very, very different than moving out of that space, doing the healing, and then moving out of that space and moving into more of the clarity of this dimension, right? So there's like, this is really like the distinction and the divide with the left brain and the right brain, right? You can almost picture the right brain being its whole entire, like having its own dimensions and its own realities, shared, subjective, but collective as well. And then the same with the left brain, right? And all of these subjective realities that we can create with the left brain, right? Through gathering sensory information and then coming to understandings with that and having those images through the pneuma projected out into the world. And then you have groups of people that will agree to, you know, and have those shared realities, which are completely left brain. And so there's this distinction that I feel is being made right now. And what we're really trying to get to is like this bringing the left and the right brain together. So it's bringing the feeling body and the mental body, bringing the feeling body and the mental body together. So the logical, the reasoning mind, and then the logical mind, the material and the phantasms, right? The mythologies, like all of that kind of underworld stuff, bringing all of those together, the archetypal worlds. And we're having to merge all of this. So it's really interesting. And I personally had, I've been doing so much work with myself and with people in my environment. So on like a smaller scale, and then collectively I bring this stuff forth and I can see the patterns collectively happening as well. And there's just so much going on related to this. So the magic, right, is in the heart. The magic is in the pneuma. It is in our ability to have right sight, like to see correctly, like to do the healing and then be able to distinguish, right, what is trauma, because those spiritual gifts, those trauma-based spiritual gifts, spiritual powers, are really enticing, right? We can pick up a lot of information on what's happening in the world from a very energetic perspective, if we choose not to heal, because choosing not to heal allows us to stay in that space. As soon as we choose to heal, we remove ourselves, like we just heal up those wounds of perception that would give us an eye into, or allow us to feel and sense those parts of the universe. And when you're in trauma, everything becomes sensitive, like you're an open wound. So you walk around and just being touched hurts. So the amount of information that you're picking up from your environment is tremendous. And it, that's why I say if someone is going through dark night of the soul, or they're going through some sort of awakening and their sensory body has opened up, like listen to what they're saying, because they are picking up on things that are there. It's just like their sensory perception blows out. And so they can pick up on all these different things. And then as you start to heal, all of that sensory perception closes off and you're not in pain as you walk around anymore. But you don't pick up on as much. And so this is why a lot of people don't want to do the healing work, because they feel like they're going to be giving up certain powers, right? And this is where, when they talk about people making a choice between the dark side and the light side, this is what it is. Are you going to choose to heal, or are you going to choose not to heal to maintain your power in that domain, in that dimension? And there's a lot of kind of fear, like, well, if I'm losing my psychic powers or my psychic gifts, you know, am I who am I, right? It becomes part of your identity. And so the reason why, trauma has an important role in evolution, first, why it's had a really important role in evolution for so long, is because when you're being traumatized, you can actually go into the details and the roots of things and start, meddling around on these deeper layers and removing things and correcting. It's like, the wires behind, like, a huge piece of electronic where you just like, you can go behind it and change the wires, change the settings, right? Change how things are connected. And so it has played a role in terms of that. But as we collectively move out of being traumatized, like if we, slowly are taking steps towards right action with each other and right action in the world, we are going to move out of the trauma body. We are going to move out of these dimensions. And we're going to be confronted with a fresh new space where we'll have to cultivate our gifts and our talents from a space of, it's different kind of like regarding power and control, right? It's a lot more like power and control regarding the self, from this external perspective, right? Instead of like in the underworld, it's like really in the material world. And then, the routines and the discipline that create the ritual that then create the way in which we experience reality, right? And then we're really controlling how we're experiencing reality here, because it is the repetition of the rituals done consciously, right? Not done through trauma based programming, but done consciously, that allow us to create magic here with the pneuma, but with consciously controlled pneuma, right? For the right reasons. And it's all done, for the self, but in consideration of everybody else. And in this space, it's much, much easier to see anything on the outside, anyone, anything on the outside that is trying to control your pneuma, that is trying to control your magnetism, your life force. And there's no longer the susceptibility of getting hypnotized so easily by other people. And so falling in love and having unrequited love, right, is, I think, an important part of the process of waking up and understanding what that mechanism is, to then be able to see it in society and to ensure that we're not possessed by, darker organizations or just anything really, propaganda at its basic level for profit and greed. But, even the crazier things going on regarding, basically everything to do with technology and removing conscious choice from individuals by slowly removing their connection to soul, and it's through what we ingest, all of the bad stuff in the foods, the glyphosates, and all of that other stuff that is put in our foods that is considered poison, but also through people misusing technology, right? Through the war machine. I mean, I can go on and on, but this video isn't about that. It's really about bringing forth this information at this time, because we are very magnetic. I was born in this month on one of the most magnetic days of the year, every year. And so I've had to manage what this magnetism is, and felt the extremes of it in my life to really come to a place of understanding its power and how it can be used against myself through the outside world, through other people. And so embracing and learning from unrequited love on this level is really powerful. And distinguishing between spiritual gifts that are trauma-based versus spiritual gifts that come from a place of being healed and fully in control of your vessel, your mind, your body, two completely different things. And the more we can look at these two and understand the differences, the more interesting things are going to become, because we're going to be able to really create with that distinction in mind. And so I wanted to bring this forth and wish everybody a beautiful August. Enjoy the magnetism, enjoy the life force, use it wisely, use it well. And I look forward to connecting with you again, probably soon, to talk about the house systems in astrology, which I've been looking at and working through as I do different people's charts. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Meet the divine. Courtly love disguises a divine love in an earthly one. It does not seek its physical consummation, but the exacerbation of the lover's passion through the phantasms of the beloved in order to ascend spiritually and escape from the world. In time, this escape route, which traced a journey back to the highest spheres of the cosmos, would eventually close, entrapping the believer in love in a pneumatic circle that would ruthlessly bind him to the sensible world, the realm of desire. Seen in this way, falling in love is a fantastic infection in which the image of the beloved, transformed into phantasm, penetrates the lover through his eyes, completely invading his pneuma and transporting him to the divine. But at times, the phantasm of the beloved penetrates the lover, emptying his soul and replacing it with its own. Besieged by these images, the lover becomes a simple carcass, invaded by the parasite soul, the beloved, which in time becomes its murderer. This similarity between unrequited love and magic led Vasilio Ficino, the architect of the Neoplatonist Renaissance of the 15th century, to declare that love is a magician. But it is Giordano Bruno who, a century later, would set the standards with which erotic magic would be transformed into disciplines such as psychology, advertising, and public relations. For Bruno, Eros, understood in its broadest sense of desire, is the bond of bonds, a tie with which one can bind the victim of a spell in order to manipulate his or her behavior. This is how a hunter of souls can deploy a pneumatic network of bonds to entrap an individual or even a mass. These bonds, or lures in the language of the time, are the functional principle of the erotic magic of the Renaissance.